Hey everyone, Mr. Harvey here. Let's get started with a new chapter today, ladies and gentlemen. We are starting chapter 15, and this chapter, ladies and gentlemen, is super important for us as it is representing the build up to World War I, and that is where we are going, ladies and gentlemen. In this chapter, we're going to talk about really important social changes. We're going to talk about urbanization, economic changes, the second industrial revolution. We're going to talk about changes with socialism, Vladimir Lenin, problems with Russia, suffrage. So, a lot to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, and let's get started. What we're going to be talking about today and focusing on today, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to talk about some demographic changes. I'm going to kind of give you the state of what's going on in Europe. Okay, there's a lot of change going on. We're going to talk a little about the second industrial revolution, some of the social changes, and some of the changes in regards to cities with urbanization. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let me kind of just give you an idea of what's going on in Europe, what's going on in the world during this time, ladies and gentlemen, okay? We are in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and European nations have a lot of power. They have these huge, vast kind of global empires. We're going to be talking more about the development of these empires, especially with imperialism in Africa and Asia in chapter 17. But we do see these huge empires, and Europe is getting a lot of their important raw materials and resources from places like Africa and Asia, which is a kind of a new development that we see in the 1800s. They're still getting a lot of important raw materials from the Americas. With the Industrial Revolution, ladies and gentlemen, they're making a lot of stuff in Europe and they're selling it, exporting a lot of their goods around the world. And we're also going to see during this time, ladies and gentlemen, especially with imperialism, and I'll talk more about this in chapter 17, but we're going to see racism. We're going to see Europeans kind of take pride in these superior civilizations. We're going to see social Darwinism, these ideologies of like the white man's burden, rise during this time. And we will be talking about that more in depth in chapter 17. But Europe is going to be really defined with its advanced technology that's rising out of the Industrial Revolution. This is during the late 19th century, early 20th century. This is going to represent the age of the automobile, the age of the radio, the airplane, the telephone, the refrigerator. We're going to see oil, steel, all these new advents that are occurring, especially within the second Industrial Revolution. We're going to see, really powerful nation states with large electorates, especially in the democratic nations such as the UK. Major political parties rising during this time, large-scale corporations with, mass oil, mass railways, mass steel making, and a really organized and large labor force that in some cases is unionized. So a lot of change, ladies and gentlemen, during this time, the late 1800s, early 1900s. But something that's really important to note, ladies and gentlemen, is Europe was very much dependent upon the world. And so Europe has a lot of control over and a lot of influence in vast parts of the world. Europe also, ladies and gentlemen, was very dependent upon the world for resources. Remember, just by looking at a globe or a map, Europe does not represent, the majority of territory or land or geography within the world. It's actually, a quite small area. But in order to kind of feed these empires and to feed the mechanization that's going on and the industrialization that's going on, Europe is really dependent upon the world for resources, raw materials. And so if things, and we're going to see this especially with World War I, ladies and gentlemen, if there's a change or a conflict, in Africa or in Asia, Europe, it's going to affect Europe, typically because Europe there has some influence there. Europe is dependent upon something with in other parts of the world. So this is one of the reasons why we're going to see a world war, ladies and gentlemen, is because Europe has so much influence and has really expanded its power globally around the world. Okay, but something that I want to focus on first, ladies and gentlemen, that's really important during the late 1800s and early 1900s is population. Is by the 1900s, ladies and gentlemen, Europe's population is going to represent 20% of the world. It's really going to boom. Europe is going to have about 447 million people by 1910. And we're going to see also, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of migration. We're going to see people continue to move from rural areas, the countryside, to urban areas within Europe. And we're going to see that continuing trend. And it's definitely going to be accelerated and facilitated by the continuing industrialization of Europe. Really important. Also, between 1846 and 1932, we're going to see 50 million Europeans leave Europe to go to different areas. The United States, Canada, South Africa, Australia, Brazil, and Argentina. And this also is economic opportunity elsewhere. So people, the big idea here that I'm trying to get at, ladies and gentlemen, is we are seeing the population go up for Europe, and we are seeing people on the move. People are moving, and there's a variety of reasons why. But people are on the move, and we're seeing immigration all over, worldwide. So very important for us, and that's kind of what this graphic tells us. So people are moving within Europe and out of Europe. But one of the key developments during the late 1800s, early 1900s is the Second Industrial Revolution. Now, I'm not going to go into the First Industrial Revolution. Go check out a video, one of my previous videos from either chapter 7 or chapter 13 on the First Industrial Revolution. But the Industrial Revolution is going to kind of enter a second phase in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And really important for us, ladies and gentlemen, when we think about the Industrial Revolution, the First Industrial Revolution, the Second Industrial Revolution, compare and contrast. Think about that. That definitely could be an SAQ, LEQ that can show up on the AP exam. Really important for us to understand. Be able to compare and contrast the two events. All right. So really important for us to understand. Remember, the First Industrial Revolution was dominated by Great Britain and dominated by the textile industry, coal as a power source, iron as a material, and the railroad industry as kind of helping move all this and facilitate all this economic development. Okay, the Second Industrial Revolution is going to be different, so it's important to kind of compare and contrast. Okay, we're going to see the gap start to close between Great Britain and the world, and the rest of the world is going to catch up. And by the 1890s, the country that's actually going to be the economic giant within Europe and arguably the world is Germany. All right, very important. And by World War I, actually, Germany's steel production, this is the wrong there. Germany's steel production is going to be twice that of Great Britain. So that's a big difference from the First Industrial Revolution to the Second Industrial Revolution. First Industrial Revolution, who's powerful? Who's got the kind of the dominance? It's Great Britain. Second Industrial Revolution in Europe, it's not Great Britain, it's Germany. That's a big change. Okay? And we're going to see new industries within the Second Industrial Revolution, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to see steel. We're going to see chemicals. We're going to see electricity. And really important for us, ladies and gentlemen, oil. I cannot emphasize this enough. The power of oil. This is going to be a huge change. So we're going to see iron kind of go away for steel. We're going to see electricity be a power source, but we're also going to see oil. Very important. Now, steel production, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be vital. We're going to start to see, steel rails on railroads. Heavy machinery is going to start to be made of steel. And one of the things about steel that's really important to understand is that it's stronger than iron. Okay, it's much stronger than iron. And the way to make steel was revolutionized by a man named Henry Bessemer, and his process for making steel was called the Bessemer process. And he's gonna have this process, and he discovered just a really quick, easy, and efficient way to produce high quality steel that is a stronger alloy of iron. Okay, chemicals, really important. We're going to see the Solvay process, which uses alkali production to make new soaps, dyes, and even plastics, which are going to be revolutionary in itself. And this, what's important about this, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk more about this in subsequent chapters, but we're seeing a direct link between science and industry. We're seeing advances in science, and that's going to really contribute to some of the advances within industries. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the important scientists who are who are really important within the development of some of these industries. All right, but oil is huge, ladies and gentlemen. Really important for us to understand. This is a game changer. Okay, an equivalent to importance. It's going to overtake coal. Is really the power source of Europe. Oil is vital. We're going to see advances in lamps is going to lead to a demand for kerosene, which is kind of petroleum based, and obviously petroleum, which is like gasoline, is oil based. And we're going to see a demand for kerosene for lighting, for heating, and eventually with the internal combustion engine in the car, it's going to lead to a demand for oil to obviously lubricate the engine and fuel the engine for automobiles. And so some really important developments during this time. We're going to see Gottlieb Daimler. He invents the modern internal combustion engine, which is going to lead to automobiles. And essentially, ladies and gentlemen, if you just a kind of quick rundown on what an internal combustion engine is it's this engine of where you have a combustion, aka, and there's multiple types. I think the two most prominent types of internal combustion engines are gasoline and diesel. But essentially, you have a compression, like a piston, and it will compress gasoline and diesel, create an explosion, and that explosion will therefore create some power, okay, to power whatever you need, and that's going to be really prominent within the car. Henry Ford, he's an American. He's going to be really important, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry that this slide got cut off a little bit, but he's an American who's going to be revolutionary in terms of the assembly line when it comes to the automobile. It's going to make the automobile more accessible and affordable for more people, all right, which is really important. The assembly line is going to help cut cost down. So some really important developments within the second industrial revolution, ladies and gentlemen. Very important for us, okay? And we're going to see cars really just technologically advance very quickly, okay? The car. And obviously today, in our lifetime, we're kind of seeing a huge change with cars, ladies and gentlemen, in regards to Tesla and electric cars. I mean, that's changing very rapidly before our very own eyes today, which is really interesting. But here are some of the first early cars. All right, and you can see the changes when it comes to the industrialization, ladies and gentlemen. You can see industrialization in 1860, levels of industrial output per capita, okay, kind of the differences, and you can see the UK really dominating that. But then we can see, ladies and gentlemen, industrialization in 1913, levels of industrial output per capita, and you can see Germany really challenging Great Britain, and Germany will overtake Great Britain, or arguably as the dominant European economic power. Okay, so very important for us to understand. All right, there will, just because we're seeing a lot of economic developments, ladies and gentlemen, there will be economic difficulties. The mid to late 19th century is not going to be void of economic depression, so there will. And I just kind of include in this slide just for y'all to be really careful. It's not like Europe is just going to go whoop and just see like this just an outrageous amount of economic expansion and just exponential economic expansion. There'll be some ups and downs along the way. And we will see a period of decline due to overexpansion, kind of spending a lot, not making enough money. Germany's going to kind of mess up their currency a little bit by going off of the silver standard. Bad weather will contribute to this. You might have famines. You might have bad weather cripple trade routes. Cut off resources from other parts of the world. Foreign competition can disrupt that. So the whole point of this, ladies and gentlemen, is just for y'all to understand that it's not going to be perfect for Europe. Okay, everything is not perfect for them economically. All right, there's still going to be unemployment. There's still going to be bad working conditions for workers not being very happy, and so not everything is perfect. And that's really the point of this slide. However, we're still going to see the expansion of industry. Industry is going to continue to develop. Consumerism, consumer demand is going to really rise during this time. People wanting things, people wanting a car, people wanting steel, people wanting, the modern technology, electricity, a demand for those things, chemicals, soaps, dyes, like all those things I talked about in the previous slide. There's going to be a demand for that, and that will bring Europe to out of any type of economic depression it has. But I'm just trying to make the point of there will be economic depression. Okay. So a big development during this time that does help Europe's economy and people invest in the economy is lower food prices, and that's going to allow Europeans to spend more on consumer goods. By not spending as much on food, people are going to be able to save up to buy that car. Okay. And something also that's really interesting is we're going to see new forms of retailing and marketing. You're going to start to see, huge department stores, okay, like outlets. You're going to start to see, chain stores, right? Like popular chain stores that we have today are like Target, okay? Catalogs, advertising, and we'll talk more about this in class and talk about advertising and catalogs and marketing and retailing. But this is all going to be new, and so Europeans are going to be, faced with advertising and easy ways, easy opportunities to buy stuff. Okay, which are dramatic changes in the world and in society. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about society, especially when it comes to social class. And we're going to talk about the middle class. Okay, really important for us, and the ascendancy of the middle class. Society is being changed a lot by the Industrial Revolution and urbanization. There's some huge social implications. And we've alluded to that a little bit in chapter 13, talking about the bourgeoisie, the proletariats. But there's some huge social changes that are occurring, ladies and gentlemen, as a result of the Industrial Revolution. And we're going to start to see the middle class diversify, aka you're going to see some stratification within the middle class, okay, and some social distinctions within the middle class. You're going to see kind of at the top of the middle class, you're going to see the owners and managers of large businesses and banks who kind of live like the aristocracy, live like the elite. And the only thing that kind of separates them is they may not have the title of the aristocracy. They may not have the name recognition of the aristocracy, like a famous family. And often they will be recognized politically. Some families will be visited by the emperors and politicians and be allowed to go visit the court. However, one thing that separates them from the aristocracy is they don't have that a title of nobility, a long lineage of strong family ties to political power. Okay, so it's so important. So that's kind of the top of the middle class. All right, kind of in the middle are smaller entrepreneurs, professional groups. You might have teachers, librarians, shopkeepers, different artisans of certain types, and their incomes allowed them to have a private home, large quantities of furniture, be able to afford an education at like a private school or a university, be able to go on vacation. So people who lived well, okay, but they weren't super rich. All right. Then we had kind of what your textbook calls the petite bourgeoisie, the white-collar workers. And these were the lower middle class, such as secretaries, retail clerks. They might be lower-level politicians or bureaucrats. And they spent money, a lot of their money, much of their disposable income, and that should say income right there, sorry about that, on consumer goods to make it look like they were in the upper part of the middle class, maybe the middle part of the middle class or the upper part of the middle class. They spent a lot of their money to make themselves look wealthier than they were. And that was kind of one of their goals, is they wanted to look like they were people of status. They often had middle class origins. They often had working class origins, and they often had middle class aspirations. So they wanted to, continue to climb the social ladder. So they often had working class origins and middle class, aspirations, trying to reach a higher social group. Okay, and something that's important is that there were tensions among these factions of the middle class, and we're going to be talking more about that, especially within urbanization of different groups living close together. Okay, and you'll see some tensions arise out of that. Now, let's talk a little about what people do socially. A lot of common activities. What are people doing, especially within the middle class, but even lower class and upper class, during this time? What do people do? Sports. We're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, a rise in sports. Obviously, in today's culture, in today's world, sports are, wow, just a really popular industry. Sports are very popular. I mean, the Super Bowl is like an unofficial, in the United States at least, an unofficial holiday. But wow, I mean, in other countries around the world, if you go to Europe, their major sport is football, as what they in America we call soccer. I mean, it is a huge sport, and so sports, ladies and gentlemen, are going to attract a lot of spectators, participants, and become very popular. And we start to see a rise of this modern age of sports during this time. Soccer, football, it's called football in other countries. Rugby, bicycling, automobile races, track and field. And during this time, ladies and gentlemen, there's a huge bicycle craze. It's going to be really, really popular, especially in Western Europe. And we're going to see a lot of people participate in getting a bicycle. And that's kind of it's really interesting when I think about this, because in society we have crazes about certain things all the time. Like, for example, the PS5 just came out and people went wild for the PS5, the PlayStation 5. And so during this time, people went wild for the bicycle and getting a bicycle. And we're going to see a lot of women participate within this. You're going to see a lot of women participate in bicycling, in various sports. And women's clothing is going to change as a result of this, as women are going to try to wear less restrictive clothing, different types of clothing that will allow them to comfortably participate within certain sports, such as bicycling, among other things. They'll allow for clothing, different types of clothing that will allow for more movement. They'll allow them to participate within these activities. We're going to see people also spend their time on the telephone. We're going to see a lot of new inventions during this time. We're going to see people listening to the radio. We're going to see the motion picture, videos, movies, the record player, the gramophone. And so a lot of people, there's a lot of different common activities, a lot of different types of entertainment, a lot of different things that people are getting interested in. And the radio, ladies and gentlemen, is really interesting because, prior to the TV becoming, so widespread and so common, it was very traditional for people, especially in the early 1900s and even up to the mid 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, even 1940s, people listening to the radio. And you would have radio programs and people just sitting around the radio, listening to the radio for their news, but also for entertainment, listening to radio programs. So the radio is definitely going to be really important and kind of serve as the predecessor for the television. But early movies, telephones, all types of things to keep people busy, all types of things to keep people interested in different things. So really, really interesting. All right. And urban life is going to be changing, ladies and gentlemen, big time. Okay. In the late 19th century, urban life is going to be very different, right? Than different than kind of different settings that we've talked about before in this class. Europe is becoming more urbanized than ever, and you're seeing more people live in urban areas than ever before. That's a huge change between 1850 and 1911. Check this out: urban dwellers rose from 25 to 44%, and you are seeing tons of traditional social norms, social ties be broken during this time. You're going to see people, who are moving to urban areas face, poor housing, social anonymity, unemployment, tough conditions, not having enough food. You're seeing a lot of different people living close to one another. People, differing from others, and they're going to be differing based on language, their religion, culture, and it's a different lifestyle. It's just totally different. People moving and seeing large communities of different people from different villages, different areas living so close now, and so it's a big change. This construct of urbanization. Um, but one of the big changes that we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, is cities. And I've kind of alluded to this before, ladies and gentlemen. This is super important. Cities, a lot of the cities, when the Industrial Revolution started, a lot of cities weren't built to have a tremendous amount of people there. They just weren't built for that. And so cities are going to are going to be redesigned and need to be redesigned in order to be able to handle this tremendous amount of people living there. And so cities during the late 1800s, early 1900s are going to start to be redesigned. All right, very important. Like I said before, urban migration is going to place a lot of new social and economic demands on these cities, and governments are going to be forced to redesign cities during the second half of the 1800s and early 1900s. Previously central cities were home to all social classes and were all worked. But now planners are going to need to transform these cities into specific districts where you have, the business district, the government offices, the commercial district, the residential district, and have more urban development and urban planning. Plan out kind of areas within the city. And so that's going to be a huge change. Commerce, trade, government, leisurely activities are now going to dominate the central part of cities, and we're going to see it. Going downtown to work or going downtown to see a game, going downtown to see a movie. Go out to eat. Go have some ice cream or something. We're gonna see cities change around these things, which is a really important development. And one of the cities that's really important, that's really going to be one of the best representations of this redesign of cities, is Paris. Paris is going to be redesigned. All right, Paris is the most famous example of urban development and transformation, and it's going to be Napoleon III who does this. Now, y'all might be like, "Well, Harv, we talked about Napoleon III, and he was a clown." Well, yes, he was, and he absolutely was, and this is pretty much one of the only good things he does. But he's going to be really forced to redesign Paris, because if he didn't, man, there might have been another revolution. But prior to Napoleon III, ladies and gentlemen, Paris was really built with little or no planning, and Napoleon III is going to, with the Industrial Revolution, with all the changes that's going on, be forced to redesign Paris. Okay. And so we're going to see Baron Georges Haussmann. He's going to be tasked with overseeing this Paris rebuilding. And Paris is going to be rebuilt for a couple different reasons. Obviously, one is to deal with the social changes that we're seeing, but there's going to be political motives as well. And this is going to be to discourage riots. There's going to be large streets, and we'll take a look at the redesign of Paris in class. We'll kind of go on Google Maps and go through Paris and see how they redesign it. And to also, accommodate the creation of thousands of government jobs. Okay, thousands of new jobs are kind of being created, ladies and gentlemen. And so they're going to redesign Paris. But the political implications of these large streets is really important. You're able to move the army through these large streets very efficiently, and that's gonna obviously, in France, revolution is very common, and that's going to be allow the government and the military to be able to move throughout the city of Paris more efficiently to deal with any revolution or rioters or any problems. Okay, you're going to see department stores be built in this new Paris, office complexes, apartments, a subway. We're going to see the Paris Opera. We're going to see the Eiffel Tower, a new basilica. Lots of changes within Paris as it's redesigned to accommodate the changing times. You're going to see the suburbs start to be built, and we'll talk about the suburbs in class a little bit more specifically, but that's kind of to get away from the congestion of the city, to kind of get away from the city, and we're going to see a lot of middle-class residents move to communities just outside of the city, right? So, we're in our major city where we're located, we're in the Ventura County We're in the Oxnard area. We're obviously kind of a suburb of LA, right? LA is an hour away, depending on traffic. We kind of live in the suburbs of Los Angeles. It's the nearest nearby major city. So, and that's kind of what we're going to be seeing, suburbs of these major European cities. And you're going to see many workers look for affordable housing to try to move to the suburbs. And so a common development that we're going to see is many people from the suburbs commuting into the city to work and then commuting back out to the suburbs to go home. So that's going to be a kind of a development. We obviously see that, right, with Los Angeles, right? That's one of the reasons why we have such bad traffic, is a lot of people are commuting to LA to work and then kind of commute back to the suburbs to live. So that's gonna be a development that we're gonna be seeing during this time, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and here's a picture of that bicycle craze that was going on. People loved it, and bicycles are cool. So still very useful today, and in a lot of different countries in Europe, there's still a lot of people use bicycles. Very common mode of transportation, and it's very common around the world. Bicycles. All right, huge department stores that we're going to be seeing develop during this time. Malls, where you can buy a whole bunch of stuff or buy a lot of different stuff. Consumerism, we'll be talking more about consumerism and its impact and how important it is. All right, and the development of the cities, the Eiffel Tower. Very important for us. All right, we're almost finished with this, ladies and gentlemen. A really important part of redesigning a city is sanitation. Sanitation is going to be really important. Why? Well, you don't want to have a mass outbreak of disease with a whole bunch of people in these congested cities, right? We right now are living through the COVID-19 pandemic. Sanitation is super key, really important, and obviously, we can, as we all know right now, right? If someone gets sick, a sickness or a disease can spread really rapidly when there's a lot of people living together, in very close kind of quarters and conditions. And so, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, sanitation is going to be really key in order to protect the public health. And so, there's going to be a growing concern for the government to help with the problems of public health and housing for the poor. For the government to intervene to help keep the cities sanitized when it comes to public health. And the concern for public health started with cholera. Okay, cholera, which was believed to be caused by filth and smell, touched all classes and reached pretty bad proportions, epidemic proportions in the 1830s and 1840s. And people during this time believed that the only way to get rid of cholera was to get rid of filth, which in turn is going to facilitate governments and cities to try to clean up the cities. And so we're going to see, a major disease outbreak in the cities, encourage the government, and it's going to touch all classes. You're going to see whether it doesn't matter whether you're poor, middle class, or rich, you can still get this disease. And so this is really going to, create a call to action to clean up the early cities during urbanization, during the Industrial Revolution, which is going to be very important. And so you're going to see, many doctors and government officials are going to publicize the dangerous and unsanitary conditions associated with urban environments, and we're going to start to see this is going to shock the public and really, create this call to action to get cities sanitized during this time. You're going to see Louis René Vierme kind of speak out about this. Edwin Chadwick, really important. Chadwick's report, really important. He's going to report on the sanitary condition of the laboring population, and it's going to shock people. They're going to be like, "What?" And it's shocking to people because it creates a little bit of fear within them that they can get sick too. And so there's gonna be this huge mobilization of people wanting to clean up the cities. Because they don't want to get sick. They don't want a major disease to break out, and so it's to clean up the cities. Very important. So there's going to be kind of a redesign of the water and sewer systems, where that disposes of human waste and providing clean drinking water, and that's obviously going to be really crucial to keeping cities healthy and sanitized. If your water and sewer systems are not very updated and not very modern, and you see a mixture of human waste with drinking water, that could not be good, and that can get people sick, and you can have disease outbreaks. So really, we're going to see a huge focus during this time, ladies and gentlemen, on modern water and sewer systems. And the government getting involved in public health, very important. And so you're going to see private property be condemned if deemed unhealthy. You're going to see building regulations in order to keep the public healthy. Very important. So we're seeing, all kind of, especially the wealthy middle class, be concerned because they don't want to get sick. Okay, we're seeing kind of all people kind of getting together with their governments and getting their cities healthy and sanitary. Very important. Proposed solution to public health hazards was the cleanliness of cities, especially focused with water and sewer systems to dispose of human waste and provide clean drinking water. And the building of these modern systems is going to be a major health and engineering achievement during the late 1800s. That's going to be very important, ladies and gentlemen. And Paris's, water and sewer systems are going to be very famous, as well as London's. We're going to see this first in the capital cities, but then kind of in the provincial cities as well. And that's going to really improve the public health of Europe, having clean water that is, free of dangerous bacterium that could get you killed and sick. Having a sewer system that is isolated, where the sewage and human waste can go somewhere where it's not going to impact huge populations of people. So that's going to be really important. And we're seeing the government involvement in public health. And we're going to see governments take the lead in utilizing governmental power to protect public health. We're going to see the Public Health Act in Great Britain. We're going to see the Mellon Act in France. So really important, ladies and gentlemen, we're seeing the government get involved with public health with these urban areas, okay? And like I said before, private property can be condemned, building regulations. And what we're seeing, ladies and gentlemen, is germ theory linked with public health, right? We're seeing science. This is really being governed and motivated and led by science. The importance of that. We're going to see this is linking with germ theory, but also we're going to see the discoveries of pasteurization, Louis Pasteur, right? Boiling water, boiling milk, boiling stuff in order to get rid of the bacterium. Antiseptics, you have Joseph Lister. I don't know if you all have ever heard of Listerine. It's named after him. But antiseptic, killing bacteria, right? And so this is science in action, ladies and gentlemen. Understand that there's biological organisms that can get people sick. There's diseases that can get people sick, and if people don't, follow and sanitize, then a lot of people can get sick, and it's deadly. Okay, so this is a lot of this is led and governed by science. Okay, and here is a picture of some of the modern water systems and sewer systems during this time. Very important. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's have this be our last slide today. It's a long lecture. Let's have this be the last slide. We're also going to see housing reform during this time, ladies and gentlemen. All right, and working conditions are going to facilitate not just a debate about public health, but about housing reform. And the dwellings of the poor shocked the middle class, but they were also a sanitation problem. And we're seeing, the middle class and upper class in the cities, in the suburbs, realize if all these people are going to be living in such close proximity, that there needs to be reform when it comes to sanitation, but also housing, or else there can be a widespread outbreak of disease. So we're going to see not just public health reform, but housing reform in conjunction with, public health reform as well. And so housing reform, was believed to be able to solve the medical, but moral and political dangers as well. If people have a nice place to stay, not only are they going to be healthier, not only is it the right thing to do, but also that can prevent revolution. And so we're going to see, Huber and Simon, they're going to be at really important advocates, but they're going to be arguing that good housing is going to facilitate a good life, a healthy life, alleviate discontent, and help create some stability within society. Remember, they're not far removed from the revolutions of 1848, massive revolutions in Europe. And so this is a way to help calm things down. And so we're going to see private philanthropy first attack the housing problem. We're going to see companies try to build housing for their healthy and stable workforce. Governments are going to be joining later with low interest rates to help construct very cheap and affordable housing and public housing options for people. And by 1914, this is really important. The housing problem is going to be fully recognized. 1914 being the start of World War I. The housing problem is going to be fully recognized as a really important thing to facilitate stability within your country. And the goal is to provide a comfortable housing for the working class that can allow them to enjoy their family life, similar to the middle class, and to bring about stability. So very important. And a healthy workforce as well. Good housing, healthy workforce, going to be more efficient. There's not going to be huge outbreaks of disease. Just really important for the overall stability of a country. Okay, we'll end here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being so patient. We'll end here talking about. In the next lecture, we'll talk about women in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Thank you so much.